This program is aimed at ninth graders across Surrey County, Elkin, and Mount Airy city schools. And it's designed to inform students about the dangers of substance use in a non-judgmental way. Throughout the week, students engaged in discussions covering various topics from mental health to the impacts of alcohol and cannabis. On Thursday, Charlotte focused specifically on marijuana, highlighting how its use can affect young and developing brains. She explained that while many teens might experiment with cannabis for reasons like stress relief or curiosity, the consequences can be significant. Simple experimentation can lead to lower grades and reduced likelihood of graduating, she warned, emphasizing that the brain continues to develop until around the age of 25. Charlotte elaborated on how THC, the psychoactive component in cannabis, can impair memory and learning by affecting crucial areas of the brain like the hippocampus and cerebellum. When THC enters the system, it makes it more difficult to learn and remember new information, she explained. This is especially concerning for students who participate in sports, as it can slow down their reaction times and diminish performance. Reeves also addressed the confusion surrounding marijuana legality. She reminded students that even in states where it's legal, users must be 21 or older. As Charlotte wrapped up her session, she encouraged students to think critically about the choices they make and the potential long-term effect on those choices. Now, normally, I would say boo dare, but this is not a dare program. And as a mom, as much as I encourage cannabis use in adults, both, for whatever reason you want to use it for, I do understand that the brain is still developing. And so for non-medicinal uses in children, there can still be some less than desirable effects. And also we, leave that up to the parents, but I'm actually happy to see an education program that's doing it in, quote unquote, a non-judgmental way. I think, when you try to scare kids, you make something more attractive and they want to do it more. But I'd love to hear what my fellow correspondents have to say, especially Dr. T. Glad to see him this morning. I'd love to get his medical opinion on the developing brain and cannabis use.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jenny. Morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you are. This is an interesting topic, and Dr. Bonnie Goldstein and I, had a podcast on Future Cannabis Project about especially adolescents and cannabis use. It's hard for me to generalize because I've seen so many adolescent patients who have benefited from cannabis use. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I really like to approach it on a case-by-case basis. In terms of general knowledge for folks, that's critical. Knowledge is power, and studies like these are about bringing more information to the population. But I have seen people with developing brains, and I've heard people with developing brains who have used cannabis early on in their lives and have gone on to be high-level academics, doctors, PhDs, after using cannabis. So what would happen if I convinced them to stop using cannabis? Would they still be as successful, or did the cannabis play a role in their success, maybe by reducing anxiety so that they can study more and focus more? So there are positive benefits to it. And so these generalized studies where they talk about it slows the developing brain is a generalized study. It doesn't speak to the individual. And so I will approach every individual as unique.
Fascinating. I agree with you, Dr. T. I think it's on a case-by-case basis because we do know there are a number of kids that have different ailments that do benefit from cannabis. But I do agree as a general overall thing that kids should wait to be adults before they start consuming cannabis. But I know I'm a bad example at the same time. I started smoking when I was like 13, and I was probably like the last one in my trailer park to like most of my friends that grew up in my trailer park, they started smoking weed around 8 or 12 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I started smoking at 12, and I'd like to think I'm a highly functioning adult most of the time. I mean, as a mom, my son's 11. I don't want him smoking anything, cigarettes, vapes. Nick, I just don't want him smoking anything. Like, his lungs are still developing. His brain is still developing. I'd like for him to just hold off on that. But, also being involved in treatment of children who had severe epilepsy and things like that, I've also seen cannabis allow them to function as closely as possible to their peers. So, maybe kids for recreation should play sports instead or something.
Right, and we also need to point out that the facts that the legalization of cannabis has not increased in that demographic group. It's increased in all other demographic groups, but not in the adolescent demographic groups. So making it more accessible and sharing knowledge about it doesn't seem to get more people using it, more teens using it. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, Dr. T. 100%.
This is ironic, you guys. I only smoked weed one time in high school.
Are you serious?
Yeah, totally.
So you're making up for last time.
I was mostly in with the jocks.
Hold on. But when you were in high school, bro, that was like before Christ.
That was before weed had actually evolved. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You were like
only
out
giant
smoking
mushrooms.
thickets, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, but no, I didn't do any drugs in high school. And what I'd say is I think that, maybe genetically and individually there are some anomalies that can withstand early exposure to psychedelics or cannabis do great. Man, what I'd have to say is like a lot of my friends smoked weed and did acid in high school, and I don't know if it was the drugs or the counterculture and them resisting school, but I find a lot of people who were heavy into recreational drugs in high school don't really have well-developed critical thinking skills. And I know, and I know for a fact that I was able to dial in and pay attention in science class, pay attention in social sciences, pay attention and learn critical thinking skills, and really order and organize my brain. And there was plenty of time for me to do drugs later, as I think I've proven.
Is the drug use in high school why I can't pick a good man? Maybe that affected that.
You know what? Hey, that might be part of it, Jenny Beth. That may be part of it. You know what I mean?
I mean, what's clear is the intention. I mean, if you're using cannabis to party, to escape, to not, develop yourself, then you're not going to develop yourself. If you're using cannabis to focus, to relax, to develop yourself, then you're going to develop yourself. And so maybe the intention is more the causative here than the actual substance.
That's a really, really, really good point, Dr. T. That changes the whole dynamic of this whole conversation right there is the whole setting of your intention.
Yeah, we haven't benefited from prohibition of substances in our society. We will benefit from education and, care of our adolescents and, really having them develop their mental health, their psychology. I've got 2 kids. I smoke like a chimney. Neither of them do. And it's been accessible to them, from the get-go. So
I think we can all speak to as parents, like the quickest way to make your kids not want to do something is for you to think it's cool. No matter what it is.
That part is true. I believe that is true. If you want to turn kids off, just make it, normalize it, and they will not want to be with it. So true. Any final thoughts on this, Mathieu St. Germain? And I know you have kids as well. I think
the panel nailed it. But again, okay, if I do have a final thought, I just think there's enough time as a child, smoking, partying, and etc. once you get into your 20s. The thing I've told my kids is educate yourself. No matter what you do in life, education is going to further your ability. College is not just, if you go to a good college, a good actionable major, it doesn't just tune up your mind. It's also the first chance you get to really network with people who are going somewhere in life. And as somebody who has been a fairly psychedelic degenerate, but still somehow seems to fall uphill constantly, big part of that is networking, the people I know, and the way I behave and the way I come through for people that I know. And so that's what I just try to tell my kids is like, dude, I'm infinity years old. Learn from me. There'll be time for weed. There'll be time for acid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Try to stay away from drinking because that shit melts your brain.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that one. Stay away from drinking, especially when
alcohol is a solvent. That's a scientific fact. If you go look up the definition of a solvent, what it's going to do is dissolve you.
Well, water is a solvent too, Mathieu St. Germain. Even though a lot of people
so don't drink water, you guys.
Don't want to.
Basically, our message this Friday is don't drink water. Water is poison.
Oh boy, yeah, we're not. We actually are endorsed by water here at High and High News, you guys.
Brought to you by water.